She let a stranger stay for one rainy night, never knowing he was her company's new CEO. Ivy stood before the CEO's office door, her trembling hands clutching a green bracelet, crooked and worn from years of use. In her mind, only one question echoed. Why would the new boss want to see me? I've already been fired. The door opened, and the man who stepped out was Nolan, the very man she had let stay at her apartment 3 weeks ago on that stormy night, the man she thought she would never see again. Now he stood before her, dressed in an elegant silver-gray suit. His eyes still carried the same gentle warmth as that night. Only this time, behind him was a vast CEO's office overlooking Lake Union. "Hello, Ivy," his deep, calm voice broke the silence. "I've been looking for you." Then, a smaller voice chimed in from behind him. "Miss Ivy, I missed you so much." Little Daisy ran out and threw her arms around Ivy's legs. Ivy knelt down, holding the child tightly as tears filled her eyes before she could even hide them. She didn't understand what was happening. All she knew was that on that rainy night, when she decided to open her door to two strangers, she had unknowingly opened the door to a turning point that would change her life forever. The story began 3 weeks earlier, when Ivy Carver still had no idea that her simple act of kindness would lead her to a destiny she never dared to dream of. A journey from loss and despair to rediscovering herself through the innocent eyes of a child. If you, too, believe that one small act of kindness can change a life, hit subscribe so you won't miss the stories that touch the heart. And now, the question remains. Will Ivy's kindness lead her to a miracle, or to a challenge greater than anything she's ever faced? That morning, Ivy woke at 5:30 a.m. Not because she wanted to, but because of her mother's dry cough echoing from the next room. She rushed out, heart pounding. Her mother was sitting propped against the headboard, trembling hands gripping the insulin vial on the nightstand. "Mom, why didn't you call me?" Ivy knelt, taking her mother's cold hand in both of hers. You still have to go to work." Her mother forced a weak smile, lips pale, breath uneven. Ivy glanced at the clock. 6:15. The bus she needed left at 6:45. If she missed it, she'd be late for work. For the 3rd time this month. But Mom... Her mother was trembling right there in front of her. The nurse finally arrived at 7:20. Ivy barely had time to throw on a raincoat before rushing out of the tiny Pike Street apartment, hair still wet, eyes ringed with exhaustion. That morning in Seattle was bleak, the sky like a heavy gray blanket. Drizzle lashed against her face. Cold, a reminder that the world never stops for anyone's pain. She wasn't good enough. She had never been good enough. When Ivy stepped into the lobby of Rainline Technologies at 8:47, Mr. Tomlinson was already waiting. He said nothing, only nodded toward the small meeting room. Ivy understood. Her heart sank as if it had slipped out of her chest. "Ivy, you're a good person." His voice was steady, cold like the click of a keyboard. "But the company needs stability. You've been late 3 times this month. Last time you called out without notice. The time before, you didn't answer the phone all morning. I understand your situation, but I can't keep you anymore." Ivy sat still, fingers gripping the edge of her old handbag. She wanted to say, "This morning my mom nearly collapsed. I can't afford a caregiver. I've tried my best." But she stayed silent. Because she knew. No one wanted to hear it. Ivy walked out of the South Lake Union building at 9:15. The rain was still falling. But this time, she no longer had the strength to run. She walked slowly, carrying a cardboard box with a few personal items. A ceramic mug, some pens, and a photo with her mother. Around her, people still laughed, talked, hurried off. But Ivy felt as if she'd been left behind in another world, a world where she no longer had a place. She sat down on a rain-soaked wooden bench outside a closed cafe near Cal Anderson Park. The wind sliced through her thin coat, but she felt nothing anymore. Only emptiness. What will Mom say? Next month's rent. Where will I get it? Medicine. The insurance is gone. Ivy shut her eyes, biting her lip to keep from crying. But the tears still fell, mingling with the rain. Then she heard a soft sob. Not her own. She opened her eyes. On the other end of the bench, under a narrow awning, a man was holding a little girl tightly. He had no umbrella, no backpack, no sign he was waiting for anyone. Only a thin coat draped over the child's head. The girl looked about 4, cheeks flushed from the cold, black curls clinging to her forehead. Big round eyes, dark and deep, stared at Ivy. 1 second. 2. Then the child looked down and clung tighter to the man. And in that moment, Ivy understood. They had nowhere to go. 2 voices rose inside her mind. One whispered, "You're losing everything. You can't save anyone." And another, warm, her mother's voice, "My dear, when you have nothing left to give, that's when what you give truly matters." Ivy stood. Her legs trembled, but she stepped forward anyway. "I'm sorry." Ivy's voice trembled as she stepped closer. The man looked up. His eyes were tired, yet cautious. Instinctively, he tightened his arms around the little girl. I'm not trying to do anything," Ivy stammered, realizing how ridiculous she sounded even to herself. "It's just, you both looked like you could use a place to stay dry." He still didn't respond, just studied her silently, as if weighing whether this woman could be trusted. Ivy swallowed hard, her heartbeat erratic. "I have a small apartment, nearby, 10 minutes away maybe, if you need a warm place to rest for the night." The man looked down at the little girl in his arms. The child looked back at Ivy, wide, round eyes caught between fear and curiosity. Then, in a low, hoarse voice, he asked, "Why would you do that?" Ivy froze. She didn't know how to answer. "Because I just lost my job? Because seeing you both reminds me of my mother? Or because if I don't help someone right now, I'm afraid I'll forget how to be a good person?" At last, she whispered, "Because, tonight, I don't have anywhere to go either." He looked at her for a few more seconds, then slowly nodded. "Thank you. Truly." He stood, resting a hand on the girl's shoulder. "Daisy, should we go with this lady?" The girl looked up timidly. "Is she a good person, Daddy?" Her voice was barely a whisper. He bent down, touched his forehead to hers, and smiled. "I think she's a very good person, sweetheart." The 3 of them walked in silence. Ivy led the way, clutching her coat tightly. Behind her, the man carried Daisy, tilting his body slightly to shield her from the rain. They passed familiar streets, Pine Street, the darkened grocery store, the bar glowing faintly onto the wet sidewalk. Ivy didn't dare look back. She was afraid that if she did, they would vanish, like a dream dissolving in the rain. When they reached the old building on the corner, Ivy unlocked her small 3rd-floor apartment with trembling hands. "Sorry, it's a bit messy." It wasn't, really. Just small, old, and modest. A worn gray fabric sofa, a bookshelf filled with second-hand novels, a few framed photos of her and her mother, faces bright and sunlit from a day long gone. The man glanced around, then nodded gently. "This is a lovely place." Ivy smiled faintly. Not really, but it's warm. I'll make some soup. Please, just rest a bit. Ivy hurried into the kitchen, flustered. She reheated the leftover vegetable soup from that morning. The smell of garlic and dill spread through the room, wrapping the small space in warmth. Behind her, she heard him take off his wet coat and settle the little girl on the sofa. "Daddy's going to find you a dry towel, okay?" His voice was gentle, patient, the kind of tone that only a single father could master. "There are towels in the hallway closet," Ivy called out, "and some clean socks if she needs them." The man turned and gave her a small smile. "Thank you. I'm Nolan. Nolan Carrick. Ivy. Ivy Carver." They shook hands. His hand was warmer than she expected. While Nolan went to find the towels, Ivy glanced toward the sofa. The little girl sat curled up, hugging her knees, eyes glimmering as she took in the unfamiliar room. Ivy knelt down beside her, her voice softening. "Hi there. What's your name?" The girl glanced toward the hallway, then whispered, "Daisy." "Daisy. What a pretty name. Like the flower, right?" The girl nodded shyly. "Are you hungry?" Another small nod. Ivy bit her lip. Her heart ached. She fetched her thickest sweater and wrapped it around the child's shoulders. It was far too big, but Daisy hugged it close, pulling it up to her chin. Then she looked up and smiled. Just a small smile, but enough to melt away the cold that had filled the whole rainy night. Ivy turned away quickly, wiping the tear that had escaped down her cheek. She didn't know it yet, but that night would change the lives of all three of them, forever. The three of them sat around a small round table. Ivy ladled soup into each bowl. Her hands were still trembling, but she tried to hide it. Nolan sat across from her, his gaze lingering on the steaming bowl. He closed his eyes and inhaled deeply. "It smells like something from a restaurant," he murmured. Ivy looked up and smiled faintly. "What kind of restaurant?" Nolan opened his eyes, met hers for a second, then shook his head gently. "Nothing. It just reminded me of an old memory." Daisy ate very slowly, each spoonful small and careful, as if she were afraid that if she ate too fast, the meal might disappear. Ivy noticed. She quietly slid the plate of bread toward the girl. "Go on, have some more. There's plenty." Daisy looked at her, then at her father. Nolan nodded. Only then did she reach out for a piece, taking a small bite and chewing carefully. Ivy felt her throat tighten. "So, what do you do for a living?" Nolan asked softly, cautious not to intrude. Ivy blinked. "Me? I worked in an office. Actually, used to. I was laid off this morning." She tried to smile, but her voice cracked near the end. Nolan's eyes softened with genuine sympathy. "I'm sorry." "It's okay," Ivy said quickly, brushing away a tear. "That's life. Ups and downs." She said it lightly, but she knew it was a lie. Nolan set his spoon down and sighed quietly. "Me too. I've lost a lot, as well." His voice slowed. Daisy looked up at her father and placed her tiny hand over his. Nolan held it, smiling sadly. "My wife passed away last year." Ivy froze. She didn't know what to say. "I'm sorry? My condolences?" None of those words seemed enough. They felt hollow. Nolan continued, his voice low and rough, as if he were speaking more to himself than to her. "Caroline, she was the one who held us together. When she was gone, I didn't know who I was anymore. I tried going back to work, tried to live as if everything was fine, but it always felt like—" He stopped. "Like I was walking on thin ice, and at any moment, I could just fall through." Ivy swallowed hard, her heart tightening with every word. "Did you quit your job?" Nolan nodded. "I took time off. To be with Daisy." to find myself again." He gently ran his fingers through his daughter's hair. "But then the savings ran out. The temporary place fell through. And tonight, we had nowhere left to go." He looked up, straight into Ivy's eyes. "Until we met you." Tears welled up in Ivy's eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. I don't even know what I'll do tomorrow. My mom's sick, really sick. I have to take care of her, pay for her medicine, the rent, and now that I've lost my job, I have no idea what's next." She let out a small laugh, one that broke halfway through. "But at least tonight, you and Daisy have warm soup." Nolan looked at her, his expression softening even more. "You know, not everyone would have done what you just did." Ivy shook her head. "I only opened the door." "No," Nolan said slowly, his tone firm but gentle. "You gave us more than that. You gave us hope." After dinner, as Ivy cleared the dishes, Nolan quietly stood up. He glanced around the small kitchen and noticed a cabinet door hanging loose. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a screwdriver. "Mind if I fix this?" Ivy turned, surprised. "Oh, you don't have to." "I want to," he said with a small smile. "It's my way of saying thank you." He bent down, tightened the screws on the cabinet, then adjusted the leaky faucet and freed a stuck drawer. Ivy stood there watching, feeling warmth bloom inside her chest. No one had ever done that for her before. No one had ever stayed and cared. Meanwhile, Daisy sat on the floor with the box of colored pencils Ivy had given her. The girl leaned over her paper, lips pressed together, completely focused. Ivy walked over. "What are you drawing, Daisy?" The girl looked up, eyes sparkling. "You." Ivy looked down at the paper. It showed a woman with blonde hair opening a door. Light poured from inside, illuminating two figures, one tall, one small, stepping in. Ivy knelt down, speechless. Then she pulled Daisy into her arms and hugged her tightly. And for the first time that long, heavy day, Ivy felt she wasn't alone anymore. It was late. Daisy lay curled up on the sofa, wrapped in the soft blanket Ivy had given her. Her dark curls were still damp, spilling across the pillow like unfinished brushstrokes on a half-done painting. Nolan sat beside her, his hand resting gently on her forehead. He said nothing, just watched his daughter sleep, eyes filled with things he'd never put into words. From the kitchen corner, Ivy prepared 2 cups of hot tea. When she turned back, Nolan was standing by the window, staring out. The city glimmered below like stars scattered across the earth. Lake Union shimmered with reflections of gold light. Everything was peaceful, except his heart. "Tea," Ivy said softly, handing him a cup. "Thank you." They stood side by side in silence. Only the sound of rain tapping the window and the faint hiss of steam between their hands. Then Nolan spoke, his voice low and hesitant. "Aren't you afraid?" Ivy looked up. "Afraid? Of what?" "Of us. 2 strangers. You don't know who we are. For all you know, we could be dangerous." Ivy smiled faintly, a sad, gentle smile. "You know, when I saw Daisy, I didn't think about any of that. I just saw a child who was cold, and a father trying his best." She paused, her gaze dropping to her cup. "I'm too tired to be afraid anymore." "Maybe. I just want to believe there are still good people in this world." Nolan fell silent. He took a sip of tea, his voice trembling slightly as he spoke again. "You saved us tonight. You know that?" Ivy shook her head, smiling weakly. "I didn't save anyone. It was just a bowl of soup and a couch." "No." Nolan turned toward her, eyes soft but firm. "You gave us something money can't buy. You gave us unconditional kindness." Ivy's throat tightened. She turned away, hiding her eyes. I don't even know what I'm doing. I just couldn't leave you both out there in the rain. Nolan set his cup down and took a step closer. What did you want to do before you stayed to take care of your mom? The question caught Ivy off guard. She looked at him, then sighed. Journalism. Columbia University. I got a full scholarship. Her voice grew smaller. But then my mom got sick. There was no one else to care for her. So I stayed. Nolan nodded, eyes filled with understanding deeper than words. Do you ever regret it? Ivy was silent for a long time, then shook her head. No, but sometimes I wonder, if things had gone differently, who might I have become? Nolan smiled softly. You already are someone. At least, in Daisy's eyes, the next morning, Ivy woke at 7:30. It was a strange, peaceful sleep. No coughing, no nightmares. She walked into the living room and froze. The room was empty. The blanket folded neatly on the sofa. The pillows smoothed out. No Daisy. No Nolan. Her heart dropped. She rushed into the kitchen. On the table sat a neatly folded white handkerchief. On top, a small piece of paper, folded in half. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Neat, steady handwriting. Thank you. And that was all. No phone number, no address, no promise to meet again. Ivy sank into the chair. Her chest felt hollow and heavy all at once. They were gone. Gone without a word. She unfolded the handkerchief. Inside was Daisy's drawing. A blonde woman, smiling, holding something green in her hand. Beside her, a tall man and a little girl. All three holding hands. Above them, a sky full of stars. Ivy pressed the drawing to her chest. Tears streamed down, soaking the paper. She didn't even know why she was crying. Only that they had taken something with them. A part of her she thought had long since died. The part that still believed in the goodness of people. She stood up and walked to the fridge. With a small heart-shaped magnet, she pinned the drawing to the door. When she looked up, she froze again. On her wrist was something she didn't remember putting on. A bracelet, made of green copper wire, with two small white beads. Crooked, uneven, but the most beautiful thing in the world. Ivy touched it gently, and in that moment, she knew. No matter what tomorrow brings, no matter how many times life knocks her down, she will rise again. Because last night, she had been someone's light. A week passed. Then, 2. Ivy wandered all over Seattle, clutching a stack of wrinkled resumes. She stopped at every cafe, grocery store, and small office with a now hiring sign taped to the window. But everywhere she went, there was always a reason to say no. Do you have a college degree? I dropped out in my second year. Oh, that's a shame. We only hire graduates. Can you work weekends? I can, but sometimes I have to take care of my mom. We need someone more flexible. To be honest, you look tired. This job is pretty demanding. Ivy just stood there, unsure what to say. Tired? Weak? She walked out of the office, gripping her worn bag straps tightly. In her head, that cold voice echoed again. You're too soft for this environment. Wednesday afternoon, her phone rang. An unknown number. Is this Miss Ivy Carver? Yes, speaking. I'm calling from Swedish First Hill. Your mother's been admitted to the ER Ivy ran. She ran across 12 blocks. No money for a cab. No time to wait for a bus. She just ran. Her shoes slipped on the wet pavement, her breath cutting into her lungs like knives. By the time she reached the hospital, hair disheveled, face flushed, the nurse looked at her with a mix of pity and concern. Your mom's stable now. It was just a mild heart attack. Luckily, The neighbor called in time Ivy collapsed into a chair in the hallway, holding her head in both hands. Her whole body trembled, not from relief, but from fear. What if no one's there to call next time? What if I can't afford the hospital bills? What if she doesn't make it? That night, Ivy went home alone. Her mother had to stay 2 more days for observation. The apartment was silent. No coughing. No faint voice calling, "Sweetheart." Just emptiness. Ivy stood in the middle of the living room, staring around. The drawing was still pinned to the fridge. The bracelet still wrapped around her wrist. But tonight, they felt heavier. Like cruel reminders, whispering, "You used to be a good person. But now, you have nothing." She stepped closer to the fridge. Her trembling fingers brushed over the drawing, the smiling blonde woman holding hands with 2 figures beside her. "That's not me. I'm not that woman. I'm just a failure." Ivy pulled the drawing off. She was about to tear it, to throw it away. But she couldn't. Her hands wouldn't move. Instead, she sank to the floor, her back against the fridge, hugging her knees as the tears came. Not quiet sobs this time, but loud, broken cries, like a child abandoned in the dark. Her cries echoed through the small apartment, but no one heard. Why? Why do I keep trying if it's never enough? Why do I do everything right and still get pushed down? Why? She lifted her face, tears streaking down both cheeks, soaking her collar. "I'm so tired. I don't want to give up, but I don't know what to do anymore." Then her phone buzzed. Ivy flinched. She wiped her tears, staring at the screen. Unknown number. She didn't mean to answer, but somehow her hand moved on its own. "Hello?" Her voice cracked. "Is this Miss Ivy Carver?" A young woman's voice, soft and professional. "This is Hannah Kim from HR at Rainline Technologies. The new CEO would like to meet with you," Ivy froze. The new CEO? "Yes, ma'am. He'd like to speak with you privately. Would 10 a.m. tomorrow work?" "But..." "I was fired." "We know. But," he said, "he needs to see you." The world seemed to stop. "Miss Carver? Are you still there?" "I'll be there. Thank you. Have a good night." Ivy set the phone down, stared at the black screen, then turned to look at her wrist, the green copper bracelet still glinting faintly in the dim light. A new CEO? Why would he call me? Did I do something wrong? But through the storm of questions swirling in her mind, a small spark flickered to life. Tiny, fragile, like a candle in the dark. Easy to snuff out, but still burning. Ivy stood up, wiped her tears, pinned the drawing back onto the fridge. Then she walked to her bedroom, opened her closet, and pulled out the one outfit she'd been saving. For tomorrow. A day that could change everything. Or break her completely. Ivy stood in front of Rainline Technologies at 9:45 a.m. The glass tower rose into the gray Seattle sky, reflecting its trademark silver clouds. She had walked past this building hundreds of times. But today, she felt like a stranger. Her white shirt was neatly pressed, her black slacks carefully laundered, her hair pulled back into a tight bun. Yet her hands still trembled. On her wrist, the green bracelet stood out, like a scar of memory. She had thought about taking it off, but she couldn't. It was all she had left. The receptionist greeted her with a polite smile. "Miss Ivy Carver? We've been instructed to expect you. 18th floor, CEO's office." Ivy nodded, swallowing hard. The 18th floor. She'd never been that high up. The elevator moved slowly, each number lighting up like a heartbeat. 5, 8, 12, 15. Ivy stared at her reflection in the mirrored walls, dark circles under her eyes, pale skin, thin shoulders. She looked like someone who had survived a storm. Ding! The doors opened. 18th floor. She stepped out. The carpet was so thick it swallowed the sound of her footsteps. White walls accented by abstract paintings. The air smelled faintly of leather, roasted coffee, and power. A young woman with bouncy black hair approached from the hallway. "Miss Carver, I'm Hannah Kim. Please follow me." Her voice was soft, polite, but there was no smile. Ivy followed, each step sinking deeper into the plush carpet. They stopped before a large wooden door. Hannah knocked lightly, then opened it. "Miss Carver is here." Her tone held a subtle tension, as if she were announcing something important. Ivy stepped inside, and the world stopped. The room was wide and flooded with light. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over a glittering Lake Union, a glossy walnut desk. But she noticed none of that, because the man standing at the window, back turned toward her, had just turned around. Nolan Ivy's breath caught. Not some unknown, powerful CEO, not a stranger in a suit, but Nolan Carrick, the man she'd sheltered from the rain 3 weeks ago, the man who'd sat in her tiny kitchen fixing her leaky faucet, the man who left without a word. Ivy. His voice was deep and warm, still that same sound, achingly familiar. But now he wasn't the rain-soaked stranger. He stood tall, in an elegant gray suit, hair combed neatly, eyes steady with confidence. A real CEO. Ivy stepped back half a pace. Her voice broke. You're... Before she could finish, a small voice rang out. Little feet pattered across the floor. "Miss Ivy! Miss Ivy! Daisy!" She ran out from behind the desk, throwing her arms around Ivy's legs, face beaming like sunlight. Ivy knelt instinctively, hugging the child. "Daisy! You're here?" "I'm here with Daddy," Daddy said. "We'd see you today." Ivy looked up. Her eyes met his, and tears spilled over before she could stop them. You're... Nolan stepped closer, kneeling to meet her gaze. His eyes were gentle, but deeper than before. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I'm sorry for leaving without a word." Ivy shook her head, wiping her tears. I don't understand. You're the CEO? You bought this company?" Nolan nodded. "I acquired Rainline 2 weeks ago, and the first thing I did was look for you." Ivy was silent. She stared at him as if she were staring at something impossible. Nolan stood, extending his hand to help her up. "That night, when you opened your door to me and Daisy, you changed everything." His voice trembled slightly, but it was clear. "I've traveled many places, met many people, but no one has ever looked at me the way you did." Ivy shook her head. I just gave you soup." "No," Nolan gently interrupted. His gaze was steady, profound. "You gave me kindness. The one thing no one can buy. You didn't ask who I was. You didn't demand anything. You just helped. And in that moment, I realized I wanted to be the kind of person you are." He turned to the desk, opened a drawer, and took out a small leather box. He placed it on the table and opened it. Inside was a bracelet, exactly like the one on Ivy's wrist. Green copper wire, 2 white beads. "Daisy made 2, he said quietly. "One for you, one for me." He looked down, smiling softly. "I wear it every day, to remind myself there are still good people in this world." Ivy couldn't hold back anymore. She covered her face as tears fell freely. Daisy clung to her leg. Nolan placed his hand gently on Ivy's shoulder, like a promise. "I didn't find you to repay a debt," he said. "I found you because I want you here." "With me? With Daisy?" He paused, speaking slowly, with absolute conviction. I want to build a company where kindness is valued. And I need you. Ivy looked up, eyes red, and whispered, You? You need me for what? Nolan smiled. To be exactly who you are. Someone who cares. Someone who listens. Someone I trust. Nolan led Ivy to the leather sofa by the window. Sunlight from Lake Union streamed in, filling the room with a soft, golden warmth. Bright, but never harsh. Daisy climbed up beside Ivy, her tiny hand clutching Ivy's as if afraid she might disappear. Nolan opened a thin folder on the coffee table. Inside was a single sheet, embossed with the Rainline Technologies logo in the corner. This is my offer, he said quietly, sliding the folder toward her. Ivy looked down. The first line hit her like a spark. Position, Director of Human Development and Community Relations. She read it once, twice, then looked up, a nervous half-smile on her lips. You're joking, right? Nolan shook his head, his gaze steady and serious. I never joke about things that matter. Ivy looked back down. The number listed under salary made her breath catch, almost 5 times what she used to earn. But I don't have a degree. I was just a receptionist. You're the woman who saved me and my daughter on the darkest night of our lives. Nolan's voice was calm but firm, every word deliberate. You don't need a diploma to have compassion. You don't need a certificate to care about people. Ivy's hands trembled as she held the paper. But what will people say? They'll think you chose me because you? She stopped herself, but Nolan understood. He leaned forward, eyes locked on hers. Ivy, listen to me. His tone was low, slow, and weighted with truth. I've run companies. I've met hundreds of people. People with degrees, with experience, with impressive resumes. He paused. But not all of them have heart. Nolan turned toward the window, his voice softening. I want to build a company where people are valued. Where no one gets fired just because they have to care for family. Where no employee has to choose between work and love. He looked out over Lake Union, the reflection of the city shimmering in his eyes. And to build that, I need someone who understands that pain. Someone who's lived it. Then he turned back to her, meeting her eyes again. That someone is you. Ivy bit her lip. Her eyes shimmered with tears again. But I don't know how to do any of that. I'll teach you, Nolan said gently but firmly. I'll be there. Every step, Daisy tugged on Ivy's sleeve, her big eyes shining. Miss Ivy, will you stay with us? Ivy looked down at that small, hopeful face, then up at Nolan, then at the green bracelet glinting on her wrist. In her mind, thoughts flooded all at once. Mom will have health insurance. I can pay the rent. I'll finally be okay. But beneath that, a smaller voice whispered, fragile, uncertain, what if I fail? What if people hate me? What if I'm not good enough? I need time to think, Ivy said softly. Her voice trembled, but it was clear. Nolan nodded. I understand. But you know. He stood, stepping toward the window. Light poured across his face. That night, when you opened the door for me and Daisy, you didn't think. He turned back, his voice slow and sure. You just did what was right. Because you believed Ivy swallowed hard. But that's different. No, Nolan interrupted gently, almost in a whisper. It's the same thing. Both are acts of faith. Both are leaps into the unknown. He took a step closer, his voice low but unwavering. That night, you believed in me. Now, I want you to believe in yourself. Ivy rose to her feet, holding the folder tightly against her chest. I'll give you my answer by the end of the week. Nolan smiled. I'll be waiting. When Ivy left the office, her legs felt weak. Hannah accompanied her to the elevator, silent. As the doors closed, Ivy leaned back against the cold metal wall and slowly slid down to the floor. She hugged the folder to her chest and cried, not out of despair, but because, for the first time in her life, someone believed in her. She stepped out into the lobby. The drizzle had stopped. The Seattle sky was still gray, but a thin ray of sunlight broke through the clouds. Ivy looked down at her bracelet, then up toward the light, and whispered, "Mom, what should I do?" In her mind, her mother's voice came, soft, steady, and clear. "My dear, sometimes the scariest thing is exactly the right thing to do." Ivy took a deep breath, then stepped out of the building, and inside her, a decision had begun to bloom. That afternoon, Ivy sat beside her mother's hospital bed at Swedish First Hill. Her mother was awake now, thinner, weaker, but her eyes still bright, as if they could see straight through to the worries her daughter tried to hide. "You look different," her mother said softly, her voice frail but warm. Ivy held her mother's hand and smiled weakly. "What do you mean?" "Your eyes. They have something in them. Fear, yes, but hope, too." Ivy stayed quiet. Then she began to tell her everything. The stormy night, Nolan and Daisy, the unexpected offer, and the fear that had been eating her alive ever since. When she finished, her mother lay still, staring at the white ceiling. Then, in a voice that was almost a whisper, she said, "Do you know what I used to wish for you?" Ivy shook her head. "I wanted you to fly far, to study at Columbia, to write the stories you dreamed of, to live the life you chose." Her mother's voice broke slightly. "But you stayed. For me, Mom, please don't listen to me, sweetheart." Her mother gripped her hand tighter, voice weak but steady. "I don't regret it, but I don't want you to live a life full of regrets." Tears soaked into the white pillow. "If someone opens a door for you, walk through it. Don't be afraid." Ivy bent forward and cried against her mother's shoulder. "But I'm scared. Scared I'm not good enough." Her mother stroked her hair gently, whispering, "You've been good enough for a long, long time." The next morning, 8:45 a.m., Rainline Technologies. This time, Ivy didn't tremble. She was still nervous, but there was fire in her eyes now. Hannah met her in the lobby, smiling kindly. "Are you ready?" "I am," Ivy replied, with quiet resolve. They didn't go to the 18th floor this time. Instead, they stopped on the 5th, an open, airy space filled with plants and natural light pouring through tall windows. "This will be your workspace," Hannah said, leading her to a cozy corner by the window. "The CEO wanted you closer to the people, not above them." Ivy looked around. A small oak desk, a soft leather chair, a little potted plant. Simple, but warm. "You'll work directly with the departments," Hannah explained. "Listen to them, learn from them, and help shape new policies." Then she paused, her tone softening. "The CEO told me to tell you. You don't need to be anyone else. You just need to be yourself." But not everyone was welcoming. At lunch, Ivy passed the pantry. Two women stood by the coffee machine, whispering just loud enough. "Who is she, anyway?" "Heard she used to be a receptionist. Got fired, and now she's a director. Must have some kind of connection with the new boss." Quiet laughter followed. Ivy froze behind the wall. Her heart pounded. Her fingers tightened around her cup. Were they right? Do I even deserve this? Am I just someone to be pitied? She didn't step inside. She turned away and went back to her desk. Sat down. Stared at the computer screen, but saw nothing. Just heard those words, looping endlessly in her mind. That afternoon, Nolan called her to his office. He sat across from her, eyes gentle but sharp. "Are you okay?" Ivy nodded too quickly. "I'm fine," but her voice trembled. Nolan was silent for a moment, then said, "I know what they're saying." Ivy's eyes widened. You know?" He nodded. "There are rumors everywhere. There always are, especially when someone rises faster than others expect." Then he looked her straight in the eye. "But listen to me. I didn't choose you out of pity, or because of personal feelings. I chose you because I believe you can change this place." Ivy bit her lip. "But what if I fail?" "Then you try again," Nolan said simply. "And I'll be here." He walked to the window, looking out at the city below. "That night, when you opened your door to me and Daisy, you were scared too, weren't you?" Ivy nodded quietly. "But you still did it, because you believed it was the right thing." Nolan turned back, eyes steady. "Now, do the same. Believe in yourself. One more time." That night, Ivy came home. She opened the fridge. The drawing was still there. The blonde woman smiling, holding hands with two figures beside her. She wasn't afraid. She believed. Ivy took a deep breath, picked up her phone, and typed a message. "I'll do better tomorrow. I promise." A few seconds later, her phone buzzed. "I believe in you. N." And that night, for the first time in weeks, Ivy slept peacefully. No nightmares, no fear, only hope. 2 weeks passed. Ivy worked relentlessly, from early morning until the hallway lights of the building flicked off at night. She moved from department to department, listening, taking notes, asking questions. She met an exhausted IT technician who'd been working 12-hour days for months. A single mother in accounting who broke down in tears because she had no one to watch her child when he got sick. A young employee who admitted he was planning to quit, because in 2 years no one had ever asked him, "Are you okay?" Ivy wrote it all down, every story, every sigh. And slowly, a conviction began to form in her heart. This place needed to change, and she would be the one to start it. Thursday, noon. As Ivy walked down the third-floor corridor, voices echoed near the stairwell. She's walking around all day asking questions. Who does she think she is? Probably just showing off to impress the new boss. Or trying to prove she deserves that special position. A soft laugh followed, sharp, mocking. Ivy froze. She knew she should just keep walking. Pretend she didn't hear. But her feet wouldn't move. Old voices came back in her head. "They're right. You don't deserve this. You're not special. You're just lucky." She ran into the restroom and locked herself in a stall. Sat down on the toilet lid, hugging her knees. Her hands trembled. Her heart pounded. "You can't do this. You should quit. You don't belong here." Then her phone buzzed. A message from Nolan. "Have you had lunch yet? Daisy's asking about you." Ivy stared at the screen. A picture flashed in her mind. Daisy's bright eyes, her tiny hand gripping Ivy's. "Miss Ivy, please stay with us." Ivy took a deep breath, wiped her tears, and typed back, "Not yet. But I'm okay. I'll eat now." She stood up, washed her face, looked at herself in the mirror. Red eyes, pale skin. But I'm still standing. That afternoon, the company-wide meeting. Over 200 employees filled the main auditorium. Nolan stood on the stage, tall, composed, and calm. "Thank you all for being here," he began, voice firm yet warm. "Today, I want to introduce a new initiative." Then he turned to the front row, where Ivy sat. "Ivy, will you come up here with me?" Ivy froze. What did he just say? He wants me up there? Hannah, sitting beside her, leaned in and whispered, "You've got this." Ivy stood. Her legs trembled, but she walked anyway. Up to the stage. Hundreds of eyes followed her. Curious, skeptical, some even scornful. Nolan leaned close and murmured, "Just speak the truth. The way you did with me." Then he stepped back, leaving her alone in front of everyone. Ivy gripped the edge of the podium, took a deep breath. "My name is Ivy Carver." She looked up, straight ahead. "I know many of you are wondering, who am I? Why am I here?" She paused, then continued, her voice steadier now. "I don't have a college degree. I used to work here, as a receptionist, and 3 weeks ago, I was fired." Murmurs rippled across the room, but Ivy didn't stop. "I was fired because I came in late, because I had to care for my sick mother, because I wasn't stable enough for the system." Her throat tightened. "That day, I felt worthless. Like I had no place in this world." She swallowed hard. "But that night, I met 2 people." Her eyes shifted toward Nolan. A father and his little girl. They had no home, nothing. And I opened my door to them. She turned back to the audience. "Not because I'm special. Not because I'm better than anyone here. But because I understood. I understood what it feels like to be judged, dismissed, unseen." Tears slid down her cheeks. But she didn't stop. "I'm not here today to prove that I deserve this title. I'm here to remind you that everyone deserves to be heard. I'm building a new program to help employees balance work and family, so no one has to choose between caring for someone they love and keeping their job, because I believe a great company isn't measured by its output, but by how it treats its people." Her voice cracked, but carried through the hall. "If anyone here has a story to tell, I'll be here. I'll listen." Anytime a long pause. Then, from the back row, a middle-aged woman stood and began to clap. Once, twice, then another joined, and another. Soon the hall filled with the sound of applause. Not from everyone, but from more people than Ivy had ever dared to hope. She stood there, tears streaming freely. And down in the front row, Nolan simply smiled. He didn't say a word. He just nodded once, his gaze warm, steady, and proud. "You did it." 2 years later. The Future of Humanity in Business Conference was held at the Seattle Convention Center. On stage, the logo of Rainline Technologies glowed beneath the warm spotlight. And in front of more than 400 attendees, Ivy Carver stepped up to the podium. She wore a soft beige suit, her hair tied neatly back, her posture confident yet humble. Around her wrist, the familiar green copper bracelet still shimmered under the light. People once mocked it as a child's trinket. Now it had become the emblem of everything she had built. Ivy took a deep breath and gripped the microphone. In the front row sat Nolan, alongside the company board. And beside him, Daisy, now 10 years old, wearing a white dress and a radiant smile. 2 years ago, Ivy began, her voice calm but steady, I was just a receptionist who had lost her job. I had no degree, no reputation, and nothing, except a belief that kindness still mattered. She paused. The hall went completely silent. But there was one man and one little girl who made me believe that sometimes all it takes is one open door in the rain to change someone's entire life. A smile spread across her face, her eyes glimmering with quiet emotion. And today, I want to tell you about what happened when we decided to turn kindness into a system. The screen behind her lit up, showing the Rainline Humanity program, which she and Nolan had founded. A short video played, employees bringing their children to the new in-house childcare center, custodians smiling as they received full health care benefits for the first time. A young woman saying tearfully, "Because of this program, I can care for my mom with cancer without losing my job." Ivy's voice wavered as she continued. "We started with just 10 people. Now, over 600 employees are part of it. And 14 other companies have joined Rainline to expand this model across the United States." She bowed her head slightly in gratitude, then looked toward the front row, where Nolan watched her, quiet and proud. "I'm not perfect," Ivy said softly. "I've been afraid. I've doubted myself. I've wanted to give up. But every time I did, I remembered one rainy night, and a little hand that held mine, saying, 'Miss Ivy, please stay with us.'" Her voice trembled, then steadied again. The right thing is rarely the easy thing. But if you choose the light, even the smallest spark, it will spread, and it will reach even the darkest corners. The stage lights shifted to a warm golden hue. Ivy smiled. Daisy ran up to the stage and hugged her tightly. The entire room rose to its feet, applauding. Nolan stood too, quietly placing a hand over his heart. Ivy looked at him, then at the crowd, and bowed deeply. Behind her, on the giant screen, appeared the words, "Kindness is not weakness. It's the beginning of everything good." Later that evening, Ivy sat by the Lake Union Pier, her feet dangling over the water. The Seattle skyline shimmered in reflection across the calm waves. She checked her phone. A message from Nolan. "Your speech made the whole hall cry." "I'm so proud of you." Ivy smiled and typed back, "I didn't do it alone. You and Daisy helped me believe. Since that very first night." She put her phone away and looked up at the sky. Beside her, Daisy leaned against her shoulder, holding her own bracelet, identical to Ivy's. "Miss Ivy," Daisy asked softly, "what if you hadn't opened the door that night? Where would we be now?" Ivy chuckled gently. "Maybe, still searching for each other. But I think the universe would have found a way to make us meet again." And that is the story of Ivy Carver. A woman who lost everything, yet found herself again through one simple act: opening her door on a rainy night. If you believe kindness still has a place in this world, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave a comment below. I will open my door for someone when it's my turn. Because sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough to believe for the whole world to change.